Hey there, it's Mitzi. Welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to do another booktube tag, and this one is called the Book Nostalgia tag. And I was tagged by Read Journal Love, and so I will leave a link to her channel below. And thank you for tagging me. Number one, the oldest book from your life that you own. Well, I was looking across my shelves, and unfortunately, most of the books that I loved as a child, I had taken to my library when I was a school teacher, and then between that and home with my own kids, they were well loved and they really didn't survive. But I'm glad that everyone was able to love and enjoy and read them just as I was. But I do have a few. I wanted to mention that my husband, when we first were married, he tracked down some books that I loved as a child. I don't even think I gave him the titles to some of them because I couldn't remember them myself. But he was able to figure out what they were, and he surprised me. And so I have some of those books, and one of them, this one was my cousin's book. It wasn't even mine, but when I remember going to his house, and I loved this book. I think I was a little older when I read it, but it's called Some Friend, and it's in the Sweet Pickles series, which was a set of books that told lessons. Basically, they were little lessons. And in this one, you have a walrus who worries too much, and basically the walrus needs a hat, and so he goes to his neighbor's house to ask to borrow a hat. And on his way, he starts overthinking the whole thing, and he starts worrying that the friend will probably have a hat but won't let him borrow it or whatever. So he just, overthinks it. So by the time he gets to his friend's house, he says, well, I didn't need your hat anyway, or whatever, and he's, angry and stomps away. Well, if you look inside the house at the back, you'll see that his friend actually has several hats on the shelf that I'm sure would have been happy to lend to his friend. And so it's just a fun little book about, why I worry so much before it even happens, kind of thing. And I always I don't know, it left an impression on me, and I always loved this book. Another one was one that we had in my sisters and I had in our home library, was Lucille, and this was just a cute little story about a horse. It was one of those easy to read weekly reader books, and it was about a horse who the farmer's wife takes the horse shopping, buys it a hat and a dress, and sets it up to drink tea and listen to the radio, and she soon finds out that the horse is not meant to be her companion, and just is not meant to be in the house drinking tea. It's just a cute little story, but I remember it well. And then I don't know why I like this one, because it's creepy. If you look at these pictures, they're kind of scary. But it's called The Ice Cream Cone Coot and Other Rare Birds. And I remember being fascinated by these illustrations in this book, because it's basically birds. Most of it's, I think, rhymes, but the birds made out of all different sorts of things. Can you see that? And one of them is super creepy. I remember this one being the creepiest one to me. It says, I do not trust the jackknife Niffy. He could swoop down and cut off your nose in a jiffy. And there he is cutting off her nose. And yeah, why did I like this so much? I do not know. I don't know why I liked it so much. But for some reason I thought it was creepy and fun to read. And so that was one I had in our library at home that I would read again and again. Your first loved library book. For me, that would be I'll Protect You from the Jungle Beast by Martha Alexander. I loved this little story. And I remember checking this out from our elementary school library. And you know how you had the little card to put your name on to check them out? Well, I'm sure my name was on there more than anyone else, because I would, every couple of weeks, one year, check this book out. I don't know why, I was fascinated. But I loved watching the little bear grow. What happens is a little boy is with his teddy bear, and they're in the forest, and he's afraid, but he's trying to convince himself that he's not by telling the bear, I'll protect you. And so as the story progresses, you watch the bear grow, the teddy bear grow, until he is larger than the boy, and he carries the little boy home. And then by the end of the story, they're back to the original size, and he says, good morning, Teddy. How was your stuffing? And I just, for some reason, I loved it. I read this book over and over, and so I tracked down a copy when I was older. And I don't know, it just holds a special place. You know, do you have a book like this? If you do, leave a comment about it, and I'd like to know what that would be. All those special books we read, you know, bedtime stories and things as children. Number 3, a book given to you. My husband has been buying for me the Daphne du Maurier Doubleday books. When Daphne du Maurier was first published, apparently they were published by Doubleday, and so I have been collecting those. This is Don't Look Now and Other Stories. It's a short story collection. I have The Scapegoat. I have a lot of these, and some of them I have the covers for, others I don't, but I usually take them off because I don't know, I just like the way that looks on my shelf. And so he'll just every now and then he'll find one and surprise me, and I just appreciate that he'll take the time to find them for me. And so that is a special collection of books. Number 4, a book recommended to you. Now this book was recommended to me years ago, and I'm so glad I read it. It was one of those books I will never forget, and I know it's been, oh my goodness, at least over a decade. But it's called Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. And this is Christian fiction. It's based on the book of Hosea in the Bible. So this is actually set during the California Gold Rush. And I happen to enjoy that, reading things about that time period. It actually caused some controversy in Christian fiction because it is about the book of Hosea. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about when I say that, Hosea in the Bible actually marries a prostitute. But the whole point of that story is that even though she leaves and she's lived this life, that he still loves her and accepts her back. And so that's what this story is about. And it's supposed to be the story of God's redeeming love for us and His grace and mercy for us. And so I enjoyed it. I thought it was a beautiful story. And they are making a movie about that may be out now, I'm not sure. But there's a movie if you're interested. Number 5 is a buddy read book. And I haven't had any buddy read books since I've been on BookTube. It's not that I don't want to. I just haven't had time to start that since I've been on BookTube. However, I did want to mention a buddy read that was a great memory, since this is a nostalgia book tag. When I was in middle school, I had a friend, and she would come over. Now this is really showing how nerdy I am. She would come over, and we would both choose 2 books. And then during the night, after everyone was settled in, we would stay up all night and read those books. And so I would read one. They were just little chapter books, you know, that we liked as middle school girls. And I would read one and then exchange it with what she had just read. And we would do that all through the night and then talk about the books and what we liked about them. And so for me, I guess that was my first experience with a buddy read. And we weren't reading it at the same time because, you know, we had different books, but it still was the same thing because we were in the same room staying up all night reading. Now you may think that was pretty nerdy. I mean, you know, we're not watching movies or talking boys or whatever you did as little girls in middle school. We were reading. So that's the kind of middle school life I led. Okay, number 6, a book introduced in school. Now I will say that most of the books in school I liked okay because I've always been a reader and I enjoyed reading. However, they didn't sell me on them because, you know, you have assignments to do with those books. So if you're encouraging someone to read a book, you don't want them to write an essay on it. You know what I mean? Or a book report. Or the worst thing was an oral book report. Oh my goodness, those things were so scary. But I do remember having a teacher in high school. We were required, probably every American high schooler had to do this. We were required to read F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. And so I happened to love this. I loved The Great Gatsby when I read it the first time in high school. A lot of my friends did not. They thought it was boring, but I thought it's a short read. It's not very long, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. When I was older, I revisited it to see if it was as good, and I liked it even better. And so Again, my husband bought me this copy. It's a beautiful copy of it. But if you haven't read The Great Gatsby, I encourage you to try it. There's a love-hate with this one. I'll go ahead and tell you that. But I thought it had a lot of things to say about the American dream, and especially during this time period. So I like that one. Number 7, a genre that inspires nostalgia. Now, I thought about this a little bit too. And I think anything you read, you know, of course, as a child, is going to be the genre for you. You always want to revisit it because it brings back that nostalgic feeling. For me, it would probably be fairy tales, because that's what I started reading on, was fairy tales, which probably most of us did. Most of you start with fairy tales? I'm not sure. Leave a comment. But I would assume a lot of us started with fairy tales. You know, those bedtime story collections and things like that. But I did want to mention something else, that it's not a genre, but it was a series that was something that I enjoyed as a kid, and it was the Choose Your Own Adventure. And I have several of these. Well, these are actually not mine. These I actually got from my son. He, when he was in elementary school, he discovered these, and we went to a secondhand bookstore, and he started saving his money and buying these up. So he has a lot of them in his collection. He really enjoyed these, and this really turned him on to reading. I'll tell you, this is my 17-year-old. When he was in elementary school, he loved these, and he loved the series of an Unfortunate Events, the Lemony Snicket series. He loved that series as well. So those were some that he liked a lot. But for me, when I look at this cover, it just takes me back to those times. If you've never read a Choose Your Own Adventure, it's basically what it says. You get to a page and it's like a cliffhanger, and then it'll say at the bottom, if you open the door, turn to page 35. If you go through the tunnel, turn to page 67. And so you go to that page and you continue on the story, so that when you read it again, you can have a totally different experience, a different ending, different twist through the story. And it's just a neat idea. And so I always love these because it was a different story every time you read it. And there's tons of these if you want to check those out, or if you have kids that maybe are reluctant readers, because this would be a fun one for some of those kids that maybe don't enjoy the typical book. Okay, my battery died, so I think I was on number 7, so we're going to go from there. I'm hoping I'm on the right one. The battery died and I didn't even know it. Okay, number 7, a genre that inspires nostalgia. I think I did that one. Number 8, a literary work that inspires nostalgia, and that would be The Hobbit. I love The Hobbit. This was my original copy that I read it from, so I won't get rid of this copy because I loved it so much. But my son bought me this one years ago, and I love this copy because it's illustrated and it's gorgeous. But the reason it's nostalgic for me is not because I read it as a child, because I didn't. I read it as an adult. But when I was in 3rd grade, I was able to bring in a book for story time. And I remember I had this set of, it was the record with the book, and I had one about The Hobbit. And I thought it was the best thing ever. And I'm showing my age because it was a record with the story. You know how you play the record? If you're old as I am, you'd know. But we would play the record, and then you would flip the story, and so I was the one to get to play the record and then stand at the front of the room and flip the pages. Everybody thought you were cool when you did that. You were the star that day. Anyway, every time I think about this book, I think about those days in 3rd grade and story time, and those little records that I had of The Hobbit and some other things. But I didn't read the book until I was older, and I mean, how can you not love Bilbo Baggins? He's like the greatest character ever created. And so it's wonderful that not only do I have that wonderful memory of the book as a child, even before I read it, but then I fell in love with the book when I read it as an adult. So that one is special to me as well. Number 9, a spiritual work that inspires nostalgia. And there's a lot of those probably for me. But these were books that were rainbow colored, I think. I think they were rainbow colored. And they were written by Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones. And he was this pastor in London, I think is where he was from, and he did this sermons, a whole sermon series that took, I think, more than a year, and he went through Romans. And so there's tons of these books. It's a whole series, and he would. The reason that it took so long was because he didn't just kind of do an overview. He went word by word, verse by verse. And so I remember these as a child. And so during this past summer, I actually picked up the first one. I thought, I'm going to look into those. I'm going to read them, and I'm going to listen to his sermons, because you can get those by podcast or online. And no. I mean, I will get to them, but it wasn't some quick thing I could get through, because again, they are super detailed. I mean, this is only chapter 1 of Romans, so they are super detailed, and I don't think I'll be getting through those anytime soon, because that is a lot. And number 10 is to tag someone. So I know this is older, so I'm not sure who has been tagged for this one. So if you haven't been tagged, consider yourself tagged right now. And if you do this tag, the book nostalgia tag, leave a link in the comments and I'll go check it out as well. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.